All right. Well, we're going to get started in our study today.
All right, there you go. You should
We are on. Alrighty. And I'm going to bring the map back up in just a second. Let me get something here.
I did not bring my map.
Oh, there'll be one on the screen here.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I love it.
All right. All right. So, just as a way of reminder, so we're going to head into session 3 now, which today we're going to be discussing, looking at the challenge of Islam in the early church, in the medieval church, rather. We're going to be looking at that. But before we do, let's take a look back at our map. This is the map that we left off with last time, and this map was really more illustrative of what takes place by the end of the early Middle Ages. So this is sort of the outlay of the land. Well, actually, this is actually more so toward the beginning, because we still have the beginning of the early age here, because we still have the entire intact Byzantine Empire. We've got the Vandals, which are a barbarian horde down here, the Berbers down here, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and so forth. And so this is the early Middle Ages, with the Byzantine Empire stretching, in sort of a crescent all the way around into northern Africa. Down here is the Arabian Peninsula. We'll get another map up here shortly, but maybe we won't. But the Arabian Peninsula is down here. And this is in this little area of the world. The Arabian Peninsula is peopled by the Arabs, which at this time in history are a people who still cling to a type of paganism, although they are very much influenced, or because through contact with Christians and Jews, there comes sort of a growing influence toward monotheism. And this is at first is not a all-encompassing thing, but they are a people who have been exposed to it, and they're very interested in it through their contact with Christians and Jews. Now, there's something else that needs to be said about the Byzantine Empire that will help us sort of understand how the expansion, the rapid expansion of the Muslims during the 7th and 8th century, how it takes place so quickly. The Byzantine Empire, while it may be an empire, still it is peopled by a number of different ethnic groups, and there also are a number of dissensions theologically within this Eastern Empire. So this is where the Eastern Orthodox Church really is centered. But we've got Constantinople here. Down here we've got Alexandria in Egypt. Look, that's the delta, I think, the Nile Delta. So it's right about here, and those really are major cities, major patriarchates. If you remember that from the last course that we looked at. Remember, there are major churches headed by patriarchs in every one of those churches. We have one in Constantinople. We have one over here in Syria. We have one down here. That's Antioch, Syria. We have one down here in Alexandria, and so on. And these are major centers of Christian thought in the Eastern Church. But if you'll also remember, there was a growing theological division in the Eastern Empire called between normal Chalcedonian, what eventually is the Chalcedonian Christians, those who affirmed the doctrine of Christ's two natures in the Council of Chalcedon, and then a group called the Monophysites or Monophysites. They believe that Christ has one nature, and it's usually where the human nature of Christ has been totally subordinated by the divine nature. That would be the Monophysite position. And Monophysitism is condemned in the Council of Chalcedon around 450 or so. But there's still major pockets of it in the Eastern Empire. especially in Syria, all the way down even into Egypt, even into Ethiopia and so forth. But there are major pockets of monophysite Christians in the empire who are basically subordinated by the Chalcedonian Christians, the actual Orthodox Christians. And but they're major populations, and they don't like living under that kind of quote unquote tyranny, which is not tyranny because they have the heretical position, right? Well, so anyway, there's a lot of infighting there, and the monophysites are very understandably, they're disenchanted with their overlords, so to speak. So that when Islam starts coming into the area, there are many monophysites that welcome the Muslims as basically people who are liberating them, and so that does much to explain why we see the fall of the Eastern Byzantine Empire that takes place so rapidly. But anyway, we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's look at Islam. Islam is a religion. Islam is a major factor in things that take place in the Middle Ages. I don't know if there's any other force. Now, there are a lot of forces and things coming together, but I don't know if there's any other force that is not, a direct work of the Holy Spirit, especially as we get toward the end of the Middle Ages, that is used of God to achieve his purpose by the Middle Ages. This Islam drives a lot of history at this time. So what is Islam? Well, Islam is a monotheistic religion. It's founded early in the 7th century AD in the Arabian Peninsula. Here's a wonderful portrait of Muhammad, which we'll talk about Muhammad here shortly. But Islam is an Arabic word that simply means submission. And in order to understand Islam, you have to understand that concept, that it is based around submission. It is a forceful, it's sort of a peace through submission. But that is Islam. The Islamic faith, and this is from Nick Needham's book, if you've got that, the Islamic faith from its origin to the present day even has always posed the greatest political and military threat and the most awe-inspiring missionary challenges to the followers of Jesus Christ. It is at the same time the biggest political and military threat, and it's the hardest nut to crack by our missionaries. Now, there used to be a young man who went to church here until he and his wife moved. His name was Travis. His wife's name was Jenny. I don't know if I know you remember Travis and Jenny. I don't think anybody else was here back then. But Travis was a nice guy. He was about 7 foot tall, so he might have been part Nephilim. He was a tall guy, tall and skinny guy. We met Travis and Jenny. They came to church one day, and then when they were engaged to be married, and we made quick friends with them and found out that he had been a missionary to Afghanistan under the International Mission Board. And she had been a missionary to somewhere in Africa, but it was a Muslim part of Africa. I don't remember which one it was, though, which country it was. But somewhere in Africa that was Muslim, predominantly Muslim. And it was a blessing to be able to sit up because, so here's the story. Right, they moved here, or she moved here. They both did. She had family in Mooresville, so they ended up renting an apartment, and he actually started living with when they moved here. He lived with one of our deacons for a while, and then waiting for them to get married because they didn't want to move in. But they both worked a job, and they rented a place so that when they did get married, they would move in together, obviously. And she stayed there. So anyway, he lived with one of our deacons, and then eventually after that, he moved out of there and lived with my wife and I and our family for a while. And when Travis lived with us, he and I, it was bad news for me because he and I would just kind of sit up at night and talk, and I would pick his brain about the mission field and everything. He tried to talk me into coming to Afghanistan with him. Yeah, what?
Which room did he sleep in?
He slept in your room, actually.
Of course he did. Everybody sleeps in my room.
That's why there are both head prints on one wall and footprints on the opposite wall.
Right. But we would sit up, and he was trying to convince me to come to Afghanistan with him to do missionary work. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. This was actually before the war.
Yeah.
And it was actually pretty close to the war, I think. But I was like, he says, well, he saw, I like guns and things like that. He says, you know what? He says, you can buy a fully automatic AK-47 for $250. I was like, really? Checking my passport, I said, a full auto, huh? I said, what else you got? He says, well, you can buy an RPG for $50. Rocket propelled grenade for $50. And I said, I can buy an RPG for $50. He's like, yeah, well, the grenade part of it. I was like, how much does a used car cost? Because I got to have something to blow up, but no, he was, we would kind of joke back and forth. It was really neat, though. He had made a video. he had made a video. I don't think that's still the going price nowadays, but anyway, he had made a video. And this video, he was called a prayer walk, and he went through the city, and I forget what city he was in now, but he went through the city just taking video and walking along, and he would stop the video occasionally and like highlight certain things that were going on in the city, and certain aspects of culture and talk about it. It was really fascinating. But about 15 minutes into the video, as I'm watching it, he stops the video and highlights this set of women that are coming through the marketplace. And he says, now this is something that you don't always see when you go to the market. You don't always see women. Because, and he sort of highlights it, and there's a man walking in front of these three women, and they are not allowed to go out in public without being accompanied by the man. If they go out in public without being accompanied by the man, they could be beaten in the city square. They would lash to a pole and be beaten for that. And he says, go ahead and rewind the video and watch it again and see. You will not see a woman in the first 15 minutes of this video. And this place is a crowded marketplace. And you would think that women are going to go to the market and get the food and all that sort of thing. But there are all kinds of weird things going on there. But he was right. And it was kind of surprising to me. Maybe this wasn't the women's market or something. I don't know. But it was definitely that kind of thing going on there.
Some things are surprising to reporters, especially female reporters, to this day if they're in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It's funny how they want to accuse Christians of being abusive toward women, and all they have to do is go to a majority Muslim country and try to do anything as a woman.
Yeah, absolutely.
Women's don't have to.
You don't touch anybody. Because as a woman, if you touch someone, they'll yell at you in tongues. And,
Not nice ones.
No.
yeah. Yeah, and if you're a white woman, you might be able to be excused, maybe. I don't know.
Well, even so, her life and safety would very much be in danger.
Absolutely.
Not
I had
so
a
much
friend
here.
that was going to go there. He was celebrating the anniversary with his wife. He was going to go to somewhere in Algeria. This resort that they had, and so he booked the tickets and all that. And then he found out that if they go off of the resort, his wife has to wear traditional Muslim garb. As long as you're on the resort, you can wear whatever. You can be Western or whatever. But if you go off the resort, you've got to wear that. He's like, there ain't no way I'm going to put my wife through that on our anniversary, And if she would have wore a T-shirt and jeans, we're not talking something immodest. We're just talking something that is not the traditional Muslim cover all square inch of your body. And it was like, man, that's kind of crazy. So he canceled and went somewhere else, I think Caribbean or something.
It's the Medina versus Mecca concept. I don't know if you're going to talk about that.
Well, we are going to talk about Medina versus Mecca, but what are you talking about?
A thought process.
Okay.
Because
Yeah, okay.
I mean, Muhammad, when he was in Mecca as first starting out his religion, he was the minority, very much so.
Yeah.
And he was under threat of persecution, even violence, so from some of the pagans that were in the area. They didn't like
We'll
him.
talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually they drove him to Medina, where he raised an army and became the majority, and therefore had his ability to subjugate other people,
Yes.
bring them into submission, as you were saying. But
And he does that. He goes right back to Mecca.
Yes, he takes
So,
it out. But
yeah.
the point is that Muslims to this day, if they're in a country like the United States where they're not the majority, and you have, I'm not talking about faithful Orthodox Muslims, not your liberal Muslims, you have liberal Christians as well, and you have the same kind of issues in Islam as you do with Christianity. But in a land like the United States where they're not the majority, they take Mecca mode, as in the early Mecca mode.
Yeah.
And they'll be quiet about it. They're obviously not going to be raising because there's no Sharia law, there's nothing like that. But
Sure.
in majority Muslim countries where Sharia law is a thing,
Oh, yeah.
and they have the ability to enforce what they want by the sword, then you have everything you've just been describing.
Right, and we're seeing places that traditionally have been Western in terms of their culture.
Europe,
Europe,
not just
Europe,
not a country in Europe, but Europe,
Europe itself. Yeah,
the whole continent.
we'll get into that, but for sure. We even see that like in Dearborn, Michigan. You know,
Yes.
the same thing is happening because they're becoming the majority, or they're becoming a very significant minority. You know, 39, 50, 30 to 40%. You know, that's where they're able to get their people elected to places of power. I mean, London, for crying out loud.
As
And
a
this-
Muslim mayor,
Yeah, and this Mamdani, what is that his name?
Yeah.
he's running for mayor of New
From
York.
New York, yeah. But he's a Muslim, and he's a socialist Muslim, which is rather interesting.
And he's gonna win.
That's what's
And
letting
he's
them
going
get
to
in
win,
through the door
yes.
for one.
What's that?
That's what's letting him get in through the door for one.
Well, sure.
I mean,
That's it. That's how it starts.
Sort of.
Yes.
They're infiltrating
The
our
answer is
government.
sort of.
Yes.
But
That's where
because
it
they
starts.
go along with that, but of course, once they take power, all the American leftists who are pro-trans,
Yeah, all the socialism
sodomy and all
goes
that
out the
stuff,
door.
Yeah.
that's going to be subjugated and put to death, quite honestly,
Yeah.
in a Sharia law situation. You
Yeah.
think Islam will tolerate sodomy? Oh no. The
Well-
Christians will preach to you. They will come at you violently.
They won't tolerate open homosexuals, no.
No.
They, however, have had a history of being sodomite themselves, which we will get into when we talk about the Crusades. I mean, that is a history there. That's what birthed Vlad Dracul. He was taken.
right. Are we talking about that? Right?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
and-
I should be quiet now.
No, it's cool. No, but
But-
you're right. Sharia
this-
law.
But that quote from Needham got me thinking about not just Europe, but Nigeria.
Yeah.
Nigeria, their Christians slaughtered frequently and constantly because
Yeah. This is still active today. This, the crazy thing about this is that, we're insulated in the U.S. We don't have a lot of Muslims here. They are a growing population now, but we're rather insulated from what they do and what they've done. And the only thing we hear about them is whatever the news decides to put on, until more recently, where now we have actual people. Social media has given us the opportunity to, anybody with a camera can go over there and detail what's going on, and then wire it back here.
Well,
So-
it's in the United States too, because they may not tolerate homosexuality, but they tolerate the people that are demonstrating for them.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that's why you go down to the New
It's called
Kings, the No Kings protest. You've got pro-Palestinian people over here, and guys wearing dresses over here, and it's like, do you know these people would kill you if they had the chance?
They're allowed.
They're going to use you, and then they're going to kill you.
I was gonna say, yes, they're allowed you to be disruptors, yeah.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
you like body,
who's that?
the Muslims.
The Muslims? Oh, they do all kinds of stuff. Yeah,
They
yeah.
cut the heads off.
yeah. That's one of the big ones.
That's
that
Absolutely.
that
The
happened
silver
with the
cord
ISIS
is
thing.
disconnected from the
It's
body.
horrific. It's horrific. Well, so anyway, this is I thought a very apt statement, very appropriate statement. Yes, they have been the biggest military and political threat to Christians, and yes, they have been the biggest evangelistic challenge for.
One other thing, and then I'll quit talking, I promise. But
Yeah,
on
no,
the
you go right ahead,
evangelism,
man.
but on the evangelism front,
Yes.
with regard to the situation in the United States, by and large, outside of Dearborn, Michigan,
Yeah.
because the issue here is Mecca rather than Medina, it makes it easier for us to evangelize Muslims because they don't have the Sharia
Yeah.
law intact, and they're not going to be a violent threat.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's like let's evangelize Muslims.
That's absolutely true. Right before the COVID shutdowns, that semester that I was teaching I was teaching at Ivy Tech downtown, and I was teaching a philosophy 101 class, and we touch in philosophy 101. I touch on the philosophy of religion, and so I go through some things pretty quickly. I mean, there's not a lot, just sort of comparative religion. I do teach a philosophy of religion class, which is a lot more expanded. But then anyway, as I was teaching this guy who was a Muslim in my class, we went over this comparative religion, and I talked about Islam, and I talked about Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism were the main ones I touched on. And after class, he comes up to me and he says, he thanked me for being even-handed with Islam. He says you could have said a lot more, but what you said was correct. In other words, it was a high-level survey. It wasn't detailed, but what I had represented it fairly. And I said, well, thank you. I said, that's great. And so anyway, we started talking. This was kind of early on in the semester. We ended up quitting. It was 8 weeks in because it was a 16-week class, and then COVID hit, and then we got quarantined. But for about 6 of those 8 weeks, he would come up and stay after class, and we would sit there because nobody was using the room next, and we would sit there for half an hour, 45 minutes, talking about Christianity versus Islam, and it was that's what it was. It wasn't anything else, and he would pose questions to me to try to knock me down and challenges theologically, and I would answer every one of them and then pose my own challenges back to him. And it was a really good discussion. And so I pray for that guy every once in a while because he disappeared. He dropped out after when COVID hit. He didn't stick around because it all went to video classes then. And there were a lot of people. I lost probably half my students at that point because a lot of people were just like, I can't do this, So anyway, but yeah, it was a great discussion. But he was a Muslim, and it was a very cordial discussion. Like you said, this is a guy who's he's not threatening. He actually wanted to know. And when he challenged me obviously on the Trinity, he challenged me on the goodness of God and the justice of God. And I would answer all of his questions. He's just like, oh, I never thought about that. And I said, yeah, now let me ask you about the Muslim God. And I challenged him we'll talk about the monad Muslim God here shortly. Who does God have to talk to before he creates anybody? Well, nobody. Well, so then God is incomplete. He's not a personal God. He can't be unless he creates. So God is not ultimate. God has to change, and the Muslim God has to adapt and change in order to relate to people. You see, but God the Father, Son, and Spirit, there is a relationship even before God says, "Let there be light." So the very foundation of all reality is a personal foundation, not some sort of impersonal monad. And it was that caused him to be like, "Huh, I don't really have an answer for that." I don't know. That was I just remember that one particular.
One of the many that only Christianity could answer.
Well, sure, yeah. You've got the one. Hinduism has the many, but you don't have both. So, anyway, so yes, Islam. Let's talk a little bit about Islam. Let's start with this guy. He looks pretty classy, doesn't he? Floating robes.
I think people would think it was Jesus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I
Right.
was thinking the same thing.
Reasons why we don't post it. No, this is right. Pictures of Jesus.
Yeah, well, he has his Quran in his hand, which is interesting, but the Quran wasn't
that's
actually compiled until, 30, 40 years after he died. But anyway, I digress. So he's born in Mecca, and his father and mother both passed away. His dad dies before he's even born, and his mother dies, when he's a kid. And then he's raised by his uncle, who is not a very wealthy man, but he's a hardworking guy. And he's raised in that context, and he himself works for his uncle as a shepherd, and he does that growing up. But he has a little more business sense for himself, and he becomes prosperous and wealthy. He becomes a successful merchant, and he's working for a woman who is a widow, and she is about 15 years older than he is. And their relationship flowers into a romantic one, and they marry. And they get married, and they have several children together. And by all outward appearances, he is a very deeply religious guy. He's very very contemplative and respectful and this sort of thing. So he would have been a nice guy if you would have met him at this particular stage in his life. And I mentioned before, in the area where he's living, he's living in Mecca. In this area, it is a predominantly pagan religion, are practices, are practiced. Pagan religions are practiced. Can't talk tonight. But there are also, as I said, there are influences sort of creeping in from the Jews, from the Christians. There are monotheistic influences present in the culture, and he is a traveling merchant, so he actually engages in business with these people quite often. And as he comes into contact with these people, he recognizes the difference between monotheism and the debauchery of polytheism and paganism. Because let's face it, the pagan gods are just morally abhorrent. Like, God has put his law in our hearts so that we get the willies whenever we see something we know is not right. Just a person with even their conscience untrained, we have the law of God in our hearts. When we see something, that's why two guys holding hands really kind of worries people. It kind of makes your skin crawl. You see two guys, you see two, and it should. That just shows that your rational faculties and your moral faculties are working well. And when I say holding hands, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Okay, so it should make you feel a little bit, nauseated, because that is not natural. It is a perversion of nature. And, we do the same thing. Violence is a perversion of morality, things like this, adultery, things that we as human beings, God has put in our hearts. And even when we try to justify them through pagan religion and justify those practices through pagan religions, we know that the excessive indulgence of our desires, it leads to no good. We see it play out in front of us time and time again with various, people that we live by and all this sort of thing. So he is there, and he is sort of scandalized by all these pagan practices. He sees within both Jewish and Christian monotheistic traditions a kind of modesty that to him is really attractive. A kind of restraint. They don't give in to their passions and their lusts like the pagans do. And so obviously there are some who do. Obviously not everybody's a good example. But overall, he sees that generally speaking, the monotheistic traditions, there's got to be something there, he figures. Well, so anyway, he travels, becomes acquainted with Christians and Jews, and he is very dissatisfied with his pagan polytheism. He goes back and he sees it, and it's just morally perverse, and he doesn't want anything to do with that. Now it's interesting. This is how God has made us, and we have these inclinations, and if they're working properly, these sorts of inclinations are intended to lead us to God, because they show us, number one, that there is a standard of good and bad, a standard of right and wrong, a standard of natural and perverse, and they show us where we don't match up with that standard. So that should lead us to look for someone who can save us from that. That's Christian theology. But anyway, this leads Muhammad at least as far as trying to look for a moral answer to this whole thing. A moral, work-centered, effort-centered way to deal with this. So anyway, in 610, Muhammad has this religious experience, or the first of several religious experiences, I should say. He is meditating in a cave or praying in a cave. Really, he's in a cave, I guess. This place that he would go to be alone. It's quiet. He could meditate. He could think. And he has this religious experience that he takes to be a vision of the angel Gabriel, he says. Of the angel Gabriel. That's who he names as the angel Gabriel.
Archangel.
Yeah, so, but I would say that's probably not the right angel. He saw a different one. But that's what he says, that's who he says he saw. And the reason I say that is because Gabriel is a godly and righteous angel. He is the angel, the messenger of Messiah. He is not an angel who would lie. And whoever this is, or whatever this is, gives Muhammad revelations that become the foundation of his religion, Yeah.
Subsequent, of course, to his interactions with Christians and Jews. And if
Mhm.
he's interacting with Christians, what's one thing that Christians are almost certainly going to tell him? Well, the birth narrative of Christ. And
Sure.
he's a prominent figure in that, the angel Gabriel.
Gabriel,
So
yeah.
he had the name.
So it would be no surprise that he would have that name. He'd be acquainted with that. But he has several religious experiences over the span of 23 years, and he dictates the content of these religious experiences to his followers. And during these 23 years, he is growing a following. People are beginning to follow him. They're beginning to listen to him. He at first, according to tradition, is terrified about this. And he goes and he talks to his wife, and his wife is like, "Well, I think these are really divine revelations," and she encourages him in his status as prophet. Not working.
Point it that way.
Oh, I must have turned it off by accident. There we go. Yeah, there we go. No, that was the last one. Maybe we can just do it. So he dictates the content of the revelations that he receives to his followers, who then write them down. He himself cannot write or read. Interesting that he cannot write or read, because there's another cultist who comes along who cannot write or read, and yet translates the golden tablets in that case. But anyway, so he dictates the content of these revelations. People write them down, and these writings become the basis of what later would be compiled into the Muslims' holy book, which is known as the Quran. Quran. Now, he becomes the first sort of leader of the of Islam. He's obviously, when he passes off the scene, other people take his place, and they'll call these people the caliphs or caliphs, depending on however you want to pronounce that. But they will call them that. He begins a new religious movement in Mecca, and remember, Mecca is not religiously neutral. You know the one place on earth that's religiously neutral? Antarctica.
There's no one there.
Yeah. So everywhere there are people there, so it's not actually religiously neutral. It wasn't, up to the last century or so. There is no place on earth wherever human beings exist that is religiously neutral. It just doesn't happen. But he begins this new religious movement, and sometimes religious movements, when they're begun in a context, they don't thrive very well. And David had mentioned this a little bit earlier. Muhammad denounces paganism, and he becomes a threat to the local economy, because in Mecca there's this shrine, this pagan shrine that people come and they visit all the time. And he starts preaching against it, much like Paul did in Ephesus. You remember the account of Paul in Ephesus when he's proclaiming Christ alone as Lord, and people are coming over to Christ so much that it starts to make a dent in the silversmith's economy, because they're busy making idols of Artemis and Diana of the Ephesians and all this sort of thing. Well, Muhammad has a similar experience in Mecca. There's this shrine there that is dedicated to pagan worship. People would make a religious pilgrimage there all the time. And there was the entire economy of the area was centered around this shrine, pilgrimages that were received. Well, his denunciation of paganism began to threaten the local economy, and people began to get mad. That sounds familiar. Local pagans began to persecute Muhammad's followers. Maybe they're standing outside of Kroger. I don't know.
Not a big surprise.
They begin to persecute Muhammad's followers, and Muhammad himself even, and he and his followers eventually flee to Medina. Now, Medina is located about 200 miles north of Mecca, and it becomes sort of a refuge. So he goes there, and in Medina, people are a lot more receptive to his message. So he and his followers move to Medina and begin to evangelize, quote unquote. Yeah, were you going to ask something or say something? Karen, were you going to say something? Oh, I thought for a second.
No, but I was thinking something.
Okay.
I was just thinking, how it progressed.
Mhm.
And it's doing it right here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure it is.
So what was the city that Muhammad started in?
Mecca, Mecca.
I thought he moved from another town to Mecca.
No, he lived in Mecca, and he started there. He lived there, and the whole thing started there. He did travel around a little bit, but his base was in Mecca. But yeah, he ends up moving to Medina because he's getting threatened in Mecca. They're persecuting the pagans or want him out of town, so he leaves. And it's at this point that he makes the one and only prophecy that he makes. The one and only prophecy of Islam is that Muhammad will retake Mecca, that he will conquer Mecca, which is a very convenient, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So he does great persuasive evangelistic work. It's not really evangelism because it's not good news, but he does this work. He spreads the word. The region is essentially converted in a very, very short period of time. And he raises an army of about 10,000 people, and he goes right back to Medina, or to Mecca from Medina. He has better success in Medina, and Islam flourishes there. The people are hungry for something better than paganism. You know what? What is interesting, what we see at the turn of epochs of history, is that people are usually hungry for something. The terrible side of that is that oftentimes that hunger leads them back into error. And that's exactly what we see here. They're hungry for something, and you know what? Monotheism is closer to the truth than polytheism. If there are degrees of closeness, it's still, there's an impassable gulf until you come to Christ. But it's a whole lot better than polytheism. It's an upgrade, so to speak, and people begin to latch onto it, and they begin to base their lives around it in this sort of thing. Islam flourishes. Well, he takes 10,000 men. And he goes back to Mecca, and he puts the smackdown on Mecca. And he puts everybody under the scimitar. And he says, look, if you want to survive, then you have to convert. You have to, and that's essentially what it is. Now, conversion in Islam is very easy. All you got to do is recite their statement of faith. But still, he goes back there, and he conquers the city. He takes control, and he repurposes. He smashes all the idols, which I'm all in favor of. He'll smash the one extra one that he's setting up. But he smashes all the idols, and he sort of reconsecrates that holy site, which was a pagan holy site, to an Islamic holy site. And Mecca today is the number one holy site as far as Muslims are concerned. That's their city. They consider their holy city. Now, don't worry, they're not going to stop there. They're going to go, take everybody else's holy city too. But that's their holy city. Well, if you've seen like the sign of Islam on the various flags of Muslim nations, like Afghanistan and Pakistan, it's always the crescent moon and the star, right?
Yeah.
So you've got something that looks like this, and then you've got the star. Something like that. This represents a percentage of the world that is Muslim, and this sign, as Islam grows, gets bigger until one day they foresee that being their new symbol. That's Islam. They have in mind world domination. Every one of them, if they're consistent Muslims. Don't be fooled by the peaceful overtures. Don't be fooled by the lies. Don't be fooled by the mealy mouth talk. And they'll try to smooth over Sharia law and things like this. No, that their purpose is world domination. Now, as a Christian, guess what our purpose is?
World domination.
World domination.
It's the same, yeah.
But we do it. We do it by evangelism.
Yeah.
We do it by the grace of God. We do it by
We don't force.
yeah. We
Power of the
don't.
Spirit, conversion, yes, it's-
Yeah, that's the only way we will do it. Because if it's not the Holy Spirit, it's not the whole
It's
world.
not.
You know.
No.
So
I
yeah.
mean, it's been said the significant difference is to put it in a little bit of just a simple saying. Muslims are willing to kill to convert. Christians are willing to die for people to be converted.
Yeah.
And that's a significant difference.
Yeah.
We lay down our lives to see the gospel and the kingdom grow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that doesn't mean we won't defend ourselves or defend the innocent or defend when the wicked come in and try to take their lives. But what it does mean is that that is not the way that we spread our faith. We don't spread it by the sword or by the AR-15.
It's impossible.
No, it is. Yeah, because you can't change the heart with a weapon. All right, so he returns there and overthrows the city. He destroys the pagan idols and repurposes the pagan shrine to Islamic holy site. Over the next 2 years, Islam spread and unified the Arabian tribes. This is a tremendous feat. Islam spreads like wildfire in the Arabian Peninsula. And essentially, the Arab tribes prior to this were just a confederacy of these loosely knit groups that were all around. Islam serves to unite them under one banner. And it only takes about 2 years. And so now we have an entire region that is unified around this singular idea of Islam. That's going to be dangerous.
The Kabbalah is the name of that site.
The shrine,
Yeah.
the Kabbalah. Yeah, go ahead.
I live over by the college there on Hannah.
Yeah.
And there are girls wearing their face, they're wearing
The
the
hijabs and stuff, yeah.
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
HIJAB.
Yeah, there's
Crossed,
this.
They won't go without it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at where was I recently?
A lot of places.
Huh?
A lot of places.
Yeah, yeah.
What's interesting about the hijabs typically worn by Western Muslims are not the ones that are worn by those in
No,
Arabia,
they're not.
because they
They're
show the
not.
woman's entire face.
Yeah,
And extremely strict Muslim areas are going to cover everything but her eyes.
yeah, exactly. I think it was at
It's
the YMCA, and we were at the pool, and there was a girl swimming with a hijab on. It was weird, like something weird like that.
Until they get to the United States and they live away from the United States.
Well, and
Then they start taking them off after they get older.
they do, but there are certainly consequences for that, depending on how strict their family is.
Their
you know.
family will disown them.
Disown them if they're lucky. That's all they'll do.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
they have
actually kick them out the door.
they have
Kick 'em.
they have in many places they engage in honor killing, and if she goes without the headdress, they will kill her. Her own family will kill her, which is unbelievable to me. I mean, my
They'll
kids.
do it right here.
Jesus' statement about if someone does not love me more than father, sister, mother, brother, yes, even his own life,
Yeah.
rings very true.
Oh,
for
sure.
recent converts to Christianity.
Well, he was speaking very soberly,
Oh, yes.
but very truthfully. He was not
Jesus
hyperbolic
No,
in that way.
he was deadly serious.
Clearly, absolutely. Well, so it spreads like wildfire. Now we'll get back to the spread of Islam shortly here, because that's quasi miraculous, except that it's not a miracle because it wasn't God. So beliefs of Islam. There are some things that we ought to understand about the beliefs of Islam, especially as we engage, because we will most likely engage somebody who's Muslim. There are many of them moving into our neighborhoods lately. There are many of them that we were at one of the Southport Festival. They have the ambassadors, which are basically high school people, kids who volunteer and stuff, and they tell you where to go.
Wearing a hijab, wasn't she?
Yeah, there was one of them that had that, and we offered her a Bible. I don't think she took it,
I don't remember.
but we offered her one. We offered everybody there a Bible. So the Southport last year, the fall festival, that was 90 degrees.
It was very hot.
It was gross hot.
Oh, that was fun.
It was fun, but it was hot because we were right next to the cookie stand. That was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Pretty sweet. All right, so beliefs. beliefs in Islam. Islam believes in the absolute unity of God. Allah is one, and Allah is the word that they use for God, which is simply the Arabic term for God. That's the word for God in Arabic. But Allah is one. He is a monad. Now that word monad means, it refers to the fact that he is a singularity. This is in contrast to the Christian understanding of God, which is God is triune. God is one God, eternally revealed in three persons: God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. That's our understanding of God. Both Jews and Muslims agree that God is not a Trinity. Both Jews and Muslims believe that God is a one, that he is one. He's absolutely unified. He's one. He's a monad. Which is why we say that modern Jews are not the people of God. Because modern Jews, if they follow Judaism, they worship the wrong God.
Because the one true God is not Unitarian, he's Trinitarian.
Exactly. Unitarian, yes, that's another way to say it. So, go ahead.
Is that why currently there's a lot of people against the Jews?
No, I wish that were true.
I mean,
Yeah, that's a big question.
okay, never mind. Okay.
The
No,
general
no,
answer
no.
is no, but it's
It's a
one.
good question.
I think that's a good
So-
question.
It is a good question, but it's annoying of an answer.
Well, so unfortunately, there are people right now who are, if we're talking the Christian world, the Reformed Christian world,
It doesn't matter with politics, Christianity, religion, whatever.
yeah, there are people in the Reformed Christian world right now who are very who are very critical of dispensational theology, and they accuse the modern Jews, and of course they accuse all modern Jews of being essentially drivers of satanic corruption in the Western world, through pornography, through things like abortion, through sodomy celebrations, things like that, through the media. They'll say things like what is his name? He's not a Christian, but Yeezy. What's his name?
I don't know, sorry.
Yeah, he's the guy that ran for president a couple years ago. The rapper was married to.
Kardashians.
Married to one of those.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know who you're talking about.
He
Oh,
came out,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
and he came out, and he was. And Mel Gibson did this too.
Yeah.
And they many people from weirdly different walks of life who have been involved in the entertainment industry have come out and talked about the fact that Jews are running things behind the scenes in order to corrupt the United States.
Any
To
number
sow
of
corruption.
nefarious things has
Yeah.
motivations.
Yeah, but
Like a shadow government?
Something like
basically like that, yeah. And so that's what they will accuse the Jews of doing. Now, this is sort of a conspiracy theory sort of thing. But there have been a lot of Reformed Christians, and ones that otherwise are pretty reasonable, who have bought into this idea, and they've been very much promoting that, which is sad to see.
Didn't Hitler promote that?
Yes.
Yes.
Different reason though.
Okay.
And your next question is there some sort of Hitler Nazi sympathies with some of these people? Sadly, the answer is yes.
Fear and
Yes,
doubt.
there are,
Okay,
which
go.
again is a sad situation, and they, to the extent that they're doing that, they need to be rebuked. So
Yeah, fear and doubt.
because
That's just your allegiance to the post-war consensus talking, Kip.
yeah, it sure is, it sure is, because I'm a boomer, man.
Yeah. Which is weird because neither of us is. We both get called that when we talk about this stuff.
It's like, dude, you need to move up about 20 years, okay? That's the boomers, not me. Anyway,
Might look like
I'm
one,
the
but
jaded Gen Xer,
Yes.
and I will not care all over your butt. so,
We just don't care.
So yeah. Oh, gee. That's my sarcasm speeching. Speechifying.
Speechifying.
Yes, sir.
I was talking to a lady that I know, and she's got a son that's in his late 20s that was attracted by some Islamic religion that he's not religious,
Yeah.
but he feels that that's a serious, legitimate religion. And I remember reading a book by Dr. Michael Gabriel, which is a pen name that he took when he came to the U.S. because he converted to Christianity.
Yeah.
And
Doesn't wanna
he's
die.
written other books, but in this book he talks about how there's a kind of it's a deceptive form of Islam that's pushed on the
Oh, yeah.
campuses and to young people, and when they get really into it or marry into it or whatever,
Mhm.
then they get the rude awakening as far as what it really is.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
They're taught in many ways to be like the quiet, sheeply people,
Mhm.
very complimentary, but when they get the numbers and the upper hand, that they are worthy of the same fate as the infidel if they don't promote and
Sure, yeah.
support Islam.
No, that's absolutely right.
Where they signed their own debt.
So
Yeah.
he was the guy that wrote this was a professor of Islamic history in Cairo
Uh-huh.
before he was abducted and tortured because some of his students accused him of being soft on the jihad.
Mhm.
So they take it kind of seriously. So the Egyptian secret police kidnapped him and
Oh, wow.
tortured him and said he's either possessed or Allah's protecting him because he should have died. So they released him, and he wrote several books on that.
Mhm. Well, so they believe God is in absolute unity, and we're going to talk about jihad shortly, Lord willing. Here. The Allah is one; He's an absolute monad. Muslims believe that Christians worship three different gods, and they'll accuse us of being polytheistic because they don't understand what the doctrine of the Trinity actually teaches. Which is funny because they're not in antiquity anyway. When they start taking over these Byzantine parts of the Byzantine Empire, they themselves start getting exposed to various philosophers and indulging in some of that sort of intellectual development and this sort of thing. And they should be able to understand what Christians are talking about, but they don't. They misrepresent that. And they also believe that there are some of them that believe that Mary is part of the Trinity. It's God the Father, God the Mother, and God the Son, and that it's a polytheistic thing. So their understanding of what Christians actually believe is highly erroneous.
And it's actually in the Quran that way, which demonstrates the Quran is not a reliable source of information.
Sure, well, absolutely,
I
yeah.
think God would represent the other teaching correctly.
Well, the Quran talks about Miriam being the mother of Jesus, Miriam, the sister of Moses, being the mother of
Right.
Jesus. I'm like, is she really old? Then
Does Allah know the difference?
They got some of their facts confused.
Yeah, she's only 1,400 years old. 1,500, I guess.
You have to remember that this guy has gotten all these revelations.
Obviously, he was plagiarizing.
Yeah, they're revelations not from God.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
In some of these writings by this Dr. Michael Gabriel,
Mhm.
there was a thing that the leaders of Islam, at the time there was like 27 or 8 of them or something, they're always the most successful in converting by the sword, and they're each given a percentage of whatever they, like almost like mercenaries, so they can go in and conquer, convert by the sword. And so the most successful conquerors for Islam then succeed to become their grand poobahs.
Yeah, the caliphs and the imams and all
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Well, they definitely do a good job at conquering by the sword. for about 100 years or so.
So it's in their teachings, it's very deceptive, very violent,
Mhm.
and very insidious because they're recruiting right now in colleges and stuff. The young people are getting
Yeah.
this, somehow they're getting a good impression about what it is, and they're not getting the whole story.
We went to a college when we were doing some abortion clinic work in Mississippi. Well, the clinic closed down and nobody was there, so we ended up going to the local college to do some evangelism. And so we were on campus and talking to people. It was local. It was Islamic. It was like Islamic Awareness Day or something like that. And they had people handing out those hijabs, scarves, whatever the scarves are called. They have a name. They had them handing them out on campus, and like, so we're walking around campus, and we see all of a sudden all these guys coming along wearing headscarves. And I'm like, do the Muslims know you're cross-dressing? You know, it's like they're
I
gonna.
don't think that would go over well.
Yeah, did they? You know, it was a fun time. That was a fun campus visit. We ended up getting in all kinds of discussions with people, and I sat down with this guy who started grilling me. Turns out he was and it was great because I was owning it, which was fun. It turns out he was a college professor there. And I was like, oh, well, that's no fun. Me too, you know. So it was a good time. You know, a lot of these people, they don't know what to do when they get a hold of somebody who knows how to answer their questions. And it's sort of the whole thing, like, where did Cain get his wife? Really? Turn to Genesis 5. You know, it's like, look. So it's like, yeah.
Genesis 1.
No, it's in Genesis 5 where it talks about that Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. Yeah, that's where Cain got his wife. Well, so anyway, the Quran teaches that Jesus is a prophet, but not divine. Well, you know, I'm glad that you're speaking in. No, I'm not. To say that Jesus is just a prophet is blasphemy.
It is
It's absolute blasphemy. Jesus is a prophet.
the greatest of prophets.
He is he is the one who also speaks through the prophets.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
Capital
yeah,
P prophet.
yes, capital P, the prophet who came in the likeness of Moses, who sees God face to face. Yes. What's that?
And exegetes him.
Yes, absolutely. That exegetes him.
Is the word.
That tabernacles with us.
Good words. Good words.
Yes, yes. All in John 1. It's all there.
It is.
You know. So yeah, but yeah, that is Jesus. Jesus is divine. To think of him as anything less is blasphemy. All right, so the next thing, so if we're talking about the beliefs of Islam, the major fundamental beliefs of Islam are what they call the 5 pillars of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam. The first of the 5 pillars is the Shahada. Shahada. And this is the Muslim statement of faith. You know, when we talk to people and we do evangelism, we tell them, look, that they need to profess faith in Christ, and you know, this is all wrapped up in being sorry for your sins and going to God and asking for forgiveness, confessing your sins, trusting that Jesus has died for you and fulfilled the law on your behalf and can forgive you of your sins. The Muslim's confession of faith is simply this. It's reciting this sentence in whatever language you speak. There's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet.
You have to recite it in Arabic.
You have to have.
Oh, I don't know about that.
I do.
They used to.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, this is something James White has dealt with quite a bit.
Well,
But it has to be in Arabic, and you have to mean it, obviously. But
that might stop the scimitar from lowering on you. I don't know.
it might honestly. That in certain situations, that was it.
Well,
It has to be whispered in your ear. I think your father did do it too. Whispered in your ear.
when you're a child, yeah,
I think
when
so.
you're born.
But it has to be. But yeah, it has to be Arabic. It has to be the confession that you actually are believing.
Okay, well,
That's also why.
If you're a convert.
good.
That's also
then.
why
I'm not a Muslim
Muslim-
convert.
No.
For having recited
That's
that
also why
sentence.
Muslims, generally speaking, don't consider English translations of the Quran to be the Quran.
Well, yeah, no, that's true. I know that.
That's the same kind of an idea because the
So
Quran
if
is Arabic.
you don't speak Arabic, you can't be a Muslim. Huh?
Well, they could say you could be a Muslim, but you still have to say the Shahada in Arabic in
Yeah.
order to become a Muslim.
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
Latin
well,
mass.
do what?
Kind of like Latin mass.
You have to say it in Latin.
And what is it?
No.
I think I might
You
remember
don't
it.
have to understand it.
Yeah,
Like
you just have to
Allah,
recite the sounds.
It's like Allah, Ilallah, Allah, Muhammad al Rasulullah.
Something like
Oh, well, now you're a Muslim.
I didn't mean it.
You didn't mean it.
Don't turn it yet. I'm stirring.
What? Don't turn it yet. You're still writing. Is that what you're saying? Oh, well, right away.
But
Keep
yeah,
on writing. Am I going too fast for you? That happens. That
Yes.
happens.
She's gonna be looking back at her little books about 10 years ago.
What was I learning?
Dad.
You know, the funny thing is, I've done that. I have looked back at my books, and I found something from high school where I was taking notes on Plato, and I don't ever remember learning anything about Plato in high school. But it was my handwriting. It was my book. Like, oh, I guess I
You have
learned about it
specific
somewhere.
handwriting.
Oh yeah, it's called sloppy.
It's not that sloppy. Not as sloppy as my friend.
Oh yes, it is.
No way.
you need to work on that, kid. Not as
Well,
sloppy as your
especially
friend.
after college, because my handwriting wasn't terrible before college. But when I started taking notes in college, because I didn't have a computer for, this, before everybody could afford laptops, and so I just wrote like fire, and yeah, I can't even go back and read those now. I'm like, what in the world is this?
What if I did?
It was like having a seizure. What's going on here?
My shorthand is not handy.
Yeah. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. The Salah. The Salah is the ritualistic prayer of the Muslim. And if you're in a Muslim-dominated city or country or something of that nature, the bell will toll or the sirens will sound 5 times a day. Detroit, yep. The Muslims are required to pray 5 times a day, facing toward Mecca. They'll be facing toward Mecca.
Don't turn it.
Just keep writing. So yeah, that happened. I remember when we were going to Chicago one time, and we stopped in Rensselaer, and there's this McDonald's in Rensselaer. That's usually the halfway point from because we were going to West Chicago, and so we were headed there. We stopped in Rensselaer, a couple hours in, and we get out and get our food, and we're coming back, and there's this guy who had pulled over, and he's a white dude with red hair, dressed in Arabic clothing, and he's bowing toward Mecca praying. That's been probably 15 years ago. But I remember that was one of my first, they're Muslims in Indiana. Maybe he was just passing through. I don't know. But it was, that was interesting to see.
There are thousands of
Oh, now there are, yeah.
yeah.
I remember one time I took my son when he was little, and he was probably 4, and my daughter Emily was 2, somewhere in there. And we went to the zoo. And back then, they don't have this anymore, but back then they had like a splash park at the zoo. And so we would always take and bring their swimsuits with them and everything. And so they were just running through there, splashing around and
Now they have
everything.
kangaroos.
Huh?
Now they have kangaroos.
Yeah. So they're running around, and all of a sudden Jake comes back to me screaming, bloody murder. I'm like, what happened? Are you okay? This sort of thing. And I'm just concerned. And it wasn't that. He got terrified. I look up, and there was a woman, a Muslim, dressed in black head to toe with just sort of the ninja eye slit. And, it freaked him out. He was always one of these kids that was afraid of, the mascots they have at various places, Like, we took him to
Chuck E. Cheese.
One time, and he was like, no, we're never doing that again.
That is scary. That is scary. Yes.
I took Rachel and Eden there one time, and they ended up hiding under the table from Chuck E. Cheese when he was coming around. I was like, well, yeah, I'm here by myself eating a pizza at Chuck E. Cheese.
I'm not a weirdo.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what I felt like.
Why? I'm not scared of that thing.
Well, it just is what it is.
My kids didn't like those kind of things either.
Yeah, the girls they grew out of it, but Jake, he persisted with it for a long time.
Is the word Selah, is that the same word that's in the Bible?
Salah.
Salah.
No. 2 different languages.
It's spelled the same way.
It's S-E-L-A in the Bible. S-E-L-A, Selah. But that's Hebrew. This is Arabic, and they're different. And that's not so much a word. It is a word, but it's sort of a musical indicator.
This just means prayer, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're just means prayer.
Next, the zakah. That is the charitable gifts to the poor. I'm going to put this up there so you can write. Okay, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, the zakah. So, we read the Bible and we see in the Old Testament, under the Old Testament law, that the Israelites were required to give 10% tithe of all of their increase. Well, this is sort of a religiously codified law. This is to be done annually, and the zakah it is a offering of 2.5% of your entire personal worth. So if you're worth, $10, then, it'd be $250. Actually, it has to rise above a certain threshold. So there's like the minimum tax, if you are in poverty, you don't get taxed. Well, the salah or the zakah rather doesn't take effect until you get after a certain amount of wealth. But once that threshold is met, that's called the nabid. The Muslim must give 2.5% of his wealth annually. So figure up all your assets, everything you own, how much it's worth, and then 2.5% of that is what you owe every year. Now, the intent of this, they say, is to purify wealth. It's charitable giving. Is to be given to. There are a number of things that you could give it to, but that are specified. But the intent here is not just to provide for the poor, for example. The intent is to purify wealth and to basically cleanse your mind and your soul from greed. And so, giving this money is a way to do that.
So they give the money to what they decide the charitable.
Well, I think, I'm not 100% clear on that, but there are a list of things that you can give to, yes, and you would think that would lend itself to some corruption, right? It's very, very possibly so. Because if you can find somebody that you like, give it to them, or exactly. The Clinton Foundation.
That's charitable.
Yeah. Keeps Hillary's, her pantsuit fund going. Anyway, I haven't seen Hillary in a minute. I don't want to see Hillary, so that's okay. I have no problem with that.
She did give Trump some. She praised him for the peace settlement.
Really?
She was on TV. She looks like she's had a glow up on her.
Trump's collapsed today, but that's.
Did it really?
Yeah.
What did she do?
What happened?
She was talking
Started
about how
shooting each other.
Trump did a good
Shocker.
job. His
You know?
candidate did a good job with the peace accords and with
Hillary Clinton did.
I was thinking, here Trump goes and achieves peace in the Middle East, and all the dispies are like, it's happening. Oh, it's Trump the Antichrist.
And then a week later, they start shooting each other again.
Yeah, sorry guys, you didn't make it 3.5 years. So
well, they just had some more bombings today.
yeah, that's what he was saying.
Oh, that was just, I
You
didn't
know,
hear it.
this is your chance to put Hamas out of commission for good. They're saying something like 58,000 Palestinians have been killed. And that's why they were accusing genocide. I'm like, look, that's what happens when you start killing civilians.
It's called war.
It's called war. So anyway,
It's not less than
It's
sword.
called when you put your civilians as combat.
It's human shield.
exactly. All right, the next is the Psalm,
Saul.
the fast.
Oh, yeah.
The fast, and Muslims are required to fast during the month of Ramadan. That is, I think, in February, March of next year. It moves around in the calendar, so it's different every year where it's at. But I think it's February and March. I looked it up there. I think that's what it is. But basically, what Ramadan is, the idea of this is to fast during daylight hours. So you begin your fast at dawn, and you end it at dusk, and you have a pre-dawn meal so that you can have the energy to get through the day, and then you break your fast in the evening so that you, as a way of giving thanks to Allah. That's the way that Ramadan goes, which is basically skipping lunch. Moving things out a little bit wider, skipping lunch is what you do. I remember hearing from a missionary to one Muslim country that made the comment that merchants love Ramadan because they sell more food during Ramadan than any other time of the year, because people are getting their breakfast on and their but anyway, that's I don't know, that's anecdotal, so I don't know if that's true, but the fast is during Ramadan. That's what this is. Abstaining from food, drink, and smoking, of all things. Can't smoke.
What about gum chewing?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Is it sugar free or not?
Yeah, right. It has some caloric.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
And Ramadan is because they have a lunar calendar changes,
Yes.
just like Easter.
Yeah, exactly. Are we done yet?
Almost got one more word. Then
And then there's the Hajj.
2 days.
Not the what is that, Johnny Quest character? Is that who it was?
Oh.
I have no idea.
Haji was
Haji.
his dog.
I thought Haji was his little Arabic guy there. Was it
Oh,
not?
could have been, yeah, could have been.
His sidekick. But the Hajj is the pilgrimage. And the Hajj is that Muslims are required to attempt or to try or to plan, if at all possible, to make a pilgrimage to Mecca at least one time in their lifetime. How's that for tourism?
Sounds lucrative. Write it in.
Yeah, well, if you see pictures of the season, I guess when these people go there, it's just inundated. They have this black, what was it called, the Kabbalah or whatever it was.
The black stone in the colony.
Yeah, and then it's just throngs of crowds surrounding it. It reminds me of Elijah, and the prophets of Baal running around and hitting themselves and this sort of thing. It reminds me of a White Zombie concert or something. Sorry, most brutal mosh pit I've ever been in.
I will take your word for it.
There was space in it, and there was big dudes in it, and so they got a running start. It's like oof. It's like being on the line or something, a football game or something. Anyway, glad those days were way gone. I'm sorry. You get everything?
Mhm.
Okay, so the next thing is the Quran. The next thing, one of the beliefs is the Quran. The Quran is the holy book of Islam, and it's composed of, I think, about 140 surahs, which are equivalent to about a chapter in the Bible or so. And these are supposed to be like the revelations of that Muhammad received.
what about Psalm 119?
Well, I said about.
There's some long.
So these are compiled by Othman. Othman is the Islam's third caliph, whatever.
Sometimes spelled with a U.
Yeah,
Uthman, take your pick.
Uthman, yeah. And these are said to be the revelations of Muhammad. And interestingly enough, they were compiled in a quote unquote authoritative edition, which means what? Well, that means that even in Othman's day or Uthman's day, there were variations. So the Muslims will like to make you believe that the Quran was spoken directly from God, and that it is the literal, in Arabic, is the literal word of God. In reality, it was compiled by Uthman or Othman, and it was the authoritative edition was compiled, and all of the other manuscripts that were contradicting or contained variations on his authorized edition were destroyed.
Convenient.
Oh, yeah.
Even so, that doesn't create the singular textual variants, or
Right.
the lack of textual variants they claim, because there are these things called, they're called palimpsest manuscripts.
Mhm.
A palimpsest manuscript with regard to the Quran was basically that it was written out on parchment or vellum or something, and then because of the cost of materials, things were erased and other
Written over.
written over.
Yeah.
And in some of these cases with these manuscripts with modern technology, you can view the original writing,
Yep.
which is a different version of some of the Quranic
Yep.
surahs and ayats that were written on it. An
Yep.
ayah is responds to a verse. A surah is a chapter. An ayah is a verse. And Muslims don't like it when you point that out. But
I
it's
mean,
true.
when the king has no clothes.
We have no variations. Yes, you do. You've been lied to,
You do,
and you're false anyways.
and you know what? The correct authorized versions has all kinds of mistakes in it anyway. Historical and logical and self contradicts. So, but that is the Muslim holy book. Now the interesting thing is that we'll get more into the Quran. We'll get more into some quotations even as we progress through our study, because the Quran contains interesting things. One of the things that is very interesting about the Quran is that it does tell Muslims that if they have any questions about the Injil, which is the New Testament, that's their name for the New Testament, that if they have any questions about the Injil, that they should go and ask the people of the book. The people of the book is the name that the Muslims have, or that the Quran has for Christians. So it says, if you have any questions about the New Testament, go ask the Christians. Okay, the Christian here.
I would love to talk to him.
Love to answer your questions. Your book tells you to ask me questions, so ask away. That's an interesting little caveat.
What's the name of it? The New Testament?
Injil,
That's the Arabic term.
the Arabic term for it, the Injil. Now they would say, and then they do say that our version of the New Testament has been corrupted. Of course, that's what all the cults say. Of course, they all disagree on how, but
Well, it's because they accept those books as far as they can be corroborated with the Quran.
sure.
But then if you were to ask them, okay, so you claim that the gospel we have, the Injil as you call it, has been corrupted? Yes.
Yeah.
Where's your evidence that happened? They will give you exactly zero.
Well,
evidence
sure,
for
they
that
don't have
because
any
there isn't.
evidence.
But of
Are
course,
you saying that there's variations? Okay.
everybody admits that.
Yeah,
except you all
that's
in
not a
your book.
problem. There are variations in the Quran also, but I digress.
But that is a question that you can ask a Muslim further. It's like, so the Injil has been corrupted. Yes. Now, what we have textual data dating from before Muhammad's time that demonstrates what we have is the original.
Yeah.
So Muhammad would have been familiar with what I'm holding in my hands to you, translated into English. This
Exactly.
is what Muhammad would have been familiar with. So
Yeah.
how could it have been corrupted?
Absolutely. If he found Christians, and he found that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Apologetics is good.
Oh yeah. Only the Arabic version is said to be the actual word of Allah. Oh, what? Did I forget to put one up there? We've already said that though. You should have already had it written down.
Yeah, I was there. We were talking about.
That, yes, that was when I was interrupting.
Yeah, but I didn't pull my notebook out yet.
Okay, well, right away. Pen to paper, let's go. Oh, well, that's why I started typing, is to number one, I could read it.
I type better when I'm not looking at my screen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
That's how I learned to type, because back in typewriter days, if you were looking at the paper, you get your hand swatted. It was like, nope, can't look at the
That's
paper.
not a lot for
Can't
me.
look at the paper.
But it's just where I close my eyes and I can type better too.
Can't look at the paper.
Screen.
Paper-
When I learned to type,
Yeah.
you remember typing, right, on a typewriter?
Yes, I.
Okay.
Linda definitely remembers that.
She's a very good typist, actually. But anyway,
She can look at me and type something.
that's what I'm saying. You don't look at your
saying.
paper what you're typing, do you?
Yes.
Do you really? You look at what you're typing? I was always trained to look at whatever I. So the thing I'm copying,
Linda, someone's gonna slap your hands
Oh,
for
well,
that.
the thing that you're typing with, yeah, I'm.
you're not looking at the paper on the typewriter.
I'm thinking that you're.
You're not looking
typing
at the
from
screen on your
head, not
laptop.
from another piece of paper.
You're
Yeah,
looking
you're
at-
looking at the other piece of
You're looking over here and doing this. As long as your hands are in the correct position.
Yeah.
Otherwise, everything is one
The
kiosk.
letters
It's really funny.
always-
What is this?
It's typing in tongues.
Get the liquid paper out, you know.
Yeah, liquid paper across your computer monitor. Right?
I do it to make sure I don't have any typos.
Are you done yet?
Almost.
Okay. This is how school goes too, quite often.
Done. Hey!
That's great. That means you think things are nuts.
All right, the hadith. The hadith.
Hadiths.
The hadith. The hadith are in. I thought I had a different picture up here for that. Oh well. The hadith are traditions about what Muhammad said and did. See, the thing is they believe that Muhammad was inspired not only in the revelations that he wrote down, but they believed that he was also that his life was the perfect example of how we ought to live. And so that's where the hadith comes in. The hadith is supposed to be a tradition about what Muhammad said and did. So evidently the Muslims have a magisterium as well. So they have that in common with the Roman Catholics. That and their work-centered salvation, you know. Minor things.
Well, they did so well.
So the hadith is these are traditions. The next thing is that there's the picture. That's the picture of the
Yeah, there
hadith.
you go. The hadith, a couple more things real quick on that if you want to.
Yeah.
Muslims consider the hadith as authoritative as the Quran in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And depending on what branch of Islam you subscribe to, the Sunni Muslims or the Shiite Muslims, the Sunni are significantly more dominant in percentage than the Shiites. But they have different groups of hadith they may consider authoritative. There are two main collections of hadith.
Mhm.
Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih al-Muslim, Sahih sayings of.
Yeah.
Sayings according to Bukhari or according to the guy who took the name Muslim. And what you said is completely accurate. They're sayings and traditions of what the Prophet Muhammad did, lived, said, and things. And sometimes they are really dry and borderline crude and inappropriate. Like how many times the Prophet went to the bathroom on a given day is recorded in some of these hadith. And that is considered to be authoritative, oral transmission, revelation. But the Prophet said that's like how the best man is supposed to be living, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, it is all this. But it's,
Yeah.
that's what the hadith is. And
Kind of reminds me of the Talmud, you know, at least in function, maybe not in content, you know.
but there are some Muslims who are like Quran only Muslims, but that's very much a minority.
Sure.
But sometimes these differences between these groups of Muslims, the Sunni and the Shiites, for example, they don't get along well.
No.
And there have been some that have said, even though Islam is a world conquest religion and it's spreading all over Europe right now, there's a unity of purpose in doing so. But, and James White has said this, he's like, that's a threat, certainly, but if they ever do get full power over Europe, they're going to destroy themselves because that's what they've always done.
Yeah.
To the
Well,
infighting, I mean, the
that's
sword
what they're
goes
doing
against each other.
Sure. They will eat themselves.
Anyway,
Yeah, so the ijma, it's the consensus of the Muslim community. And some people will say it's not exactly the consensus of the community, rather, it's the consensus of Muslim teachers and scholars and, you know, this sort of thing. This is basically, you know, the idea that they've arrived at a consensus, an agreement on certain behaviors or certain actions. And in light of that, then we go with that. So the question then becomes, what happens when these things contradict one another? Do you have a question?
What happens? Wait, that's scary.
What?
They count how many times he goes to the bathroom.
that's one example. Not all of them are that crude and mundane. But those things are included. I said that not because that's the majority of what are contained in the hadith. Well, something might be. But
Yeah,
that
sure.
it contains things like that.
In his bathroom habits, get this kind of book gilding here. You know?
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Why are they stalking him?
Because he was the
I
example.
love that
of
question.
what the perfect man was.
Why are they stalking him? I don't know that there's anybody watching him writing this down. This was probably, well, for one, he might have written some things down, but
He didn't know how to write.
Dictate.
that's true. He might have told it.
Yeah.
He had, and then for the first couple caliphs after that, they were all related to him, so they probably could have related some stories. But I'm sure that it's probably been added to throughout the years. I don't have any evidence of that, so I can prove it, but I'm sure that that's probably the way things go. All right, so factions within Islam, different factions. So Muslim succession was pretty smooth until after the murder of the third Caliph, Uthman, whatever it is. Then unity of Muslims was fractured. Now Uthman is the one who gave us the authoritative Quran. And after him, Muslim succession becomes a point of contention. And you mentioned just a moment ago the Sunnis versus the Shiites. And those are the two major groups of Muslims in the world today. And then, of course, we've got the Sufis as well, which we'll talk a little bit about them. And actually, the first Muslim guy that I ever had a really good conversation was a Sufi Muslim. That was interesting. It's been years ago, but it was a very interesting exchange. I think I was in college at the time, so that would have been sometime before 2007, somewhere back there. But bless you, I had a good conversation with him about what he believed, and at the time I was a pretty new Christian. But that's when I discovered that there is the Islamic Center of North America is located right over in Plainfield, and just right, yeah.
How did I not know that?
It's
been there for
actually right,
years.
kind of close to Will's house. You know,
Yeah.
if you get off the Plainfield exit and you go back to whatever road that is, instead of taking a left, you can take a right. It's right next to the interstate.
Wow.
Yep.
Ah,
Yep.
they're 267 in 70?
Yes. Yeah, that's 262. That goes through Plainfield, right? 267 goes
Yeah.
through Plainfield. So if you take 267 where it curves around and then tees into that other road that goes through Plainfield, there's another bridge that goes over the interstate. And you go to that road where it tees, take a right instead of a left. If you're going to Wills, you take a left.
Okay, yeah, so you go south of the interstate and then hit the T and take a right. Okay.
Yeah. And you just drive and just look to your right. I remember the first time I saw it, I actually was in a work van.
And you're like,
And I'm like, well, the windows are funny shaped. And I was like, what in the heck is that kind of building? You know, and I had no idea. And so anyway, I drove by it a couple more times, and finally I saw a sign somewhere that said the Islamic Center of North America. It's right there.
They might have prayed to that instead of Mecca.
Do what?
They might actually pray to that instead of Mecca, but they don't know which way.
Well, I imagine that, I think it's to the east here in Indiana. I suppose it depends on where you're located on the globe as to where Mecca is. But I think they still pray to Mecca that way. So I think they would face generally an east thing from here, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so the Shia Muslims are the smaller of the two groups. The Shia believe, here, let me put that all up there. The Shia believe, they were the ones who believed that after the next caliph, whoever that would be after Uthman, would be somebody who should be related to Muhammad. So the title should be hereditary, and it should be of the line of Muhammad. Now this, I believe the person that started this was he had married Muhammad's youngest daughter. Her name was Fatima, and it was her husband. And he wanted one of his children to be the next caliph, because he said they're of the line, they're Muhammad's grandchildren. And so that's what he was one of the main people who started it. The Shia are led by an imam who's their their leader. They represent only about 10 to 15% of Muslims, depending on who you ask. So they're the minority. These are located primarily in ancient Persia, which is modern Iraq, Iran, and Azerbaijan. That's the main population. There are large populations in other Middle Eastern countries, but those are the main population centers there.
Dearborn, are they mostly Shiite? I think
I
there
don't
are a
know.
lot of Iraqi immigrants
Are
to
they?
Dearborn. I think they might be. I'm not sure. But
I honestly don't know. I don't know.
sometimes the term imam is used to describe the leader of the mosque as well. I think.
Yeah. They're teachers. Okay, so you have the Shia. Keep going.
And then the Sunni.
And then the Sunni. And we'll get to them pretty soon.
Wow. Oh, dear.
They have a hereditary leader now, though. They don't, do they?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I think it's more that the leaders are leaders in every nation. So every nation has their own little person up at the top. Like what do they call them in Iran? The Ayatollah, yeah. The Ayatollah, he's the sort of the grand leader, but they may trace their lineage. And it's not like it wouldn't be like all the Shia have one leader, but they might have people who would say, yes, I'm the great, and so on, grandson of,
I don't think they
Muhammad
can
through
agree
this
on it.
child or whatever.
Yeah.
They can't really agree on it, and the reason because there is no university declared caliph right now. There hasn't been for some time.
Right.
If they ever were to agree on that, look out.
Yeah. Keep your powder dry, boys.
Well, I mean that's where organizations like ISIS were gaining momentum. They tried to declare a caliphate in their group,
Mhm.
and that was motivation for people to join them and be militaristic.
Yeah.
Because technically, according to the Quran, according to the interpretation of some,
Yeah.
is that you cannot have a legitimate jihad without
Without a
an active caliphate.
Well,
So
Yeah.
so then
There's that.
everybody's going to join arms then, right?
maybe.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. The next one are the Sunni.
And it's gone.
Yeah, that was quick. The Sunni Muslims. The Sunni are the ones who believe that a current leader should appoint a successor. That there should be a succession, but whoever is the current leader appoints their successor, or if they die before they do that, then the successor would be named or elected by the elders of the nation, whoever that happens to be. The Sunni Muslims are about 85 to 90% of the Muslim population. They're the largest majority populations.
Saudi Arabia, big headquarters.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia. I mean, even you move into other nations, like for example, Indonesia is 90% Muslim. And Indonesia is a very populated island chain. But yeah, the Sunni are found pretty much everywhere. Well, everywhere Muslims are found. Now that's the initial discrepancy between them, but they have been fighting for millennia now. Well, a millennium and a half
Fighting who?
themselves, the Sunni and the Shiites.
Oh,
They don't get along very well. Yeah, so. Are you done?
No.
Okay. Well, and remember that the Islam of today is more developed than what was existing at this particular time in history. Islam was developing itself and growing and this kind of thing. But we still face the same kind of threat that the Crusaders faced, that the early Christians faced, the medieval Christians.
And Jesus said,
Sure.
So what about the Sufi? Are they, what percentage are they like?
Well, the Sufi, we'll get to them next. They're next. The Sufi are not an additional group. The Sufi, these are a branch of Muslims that can be both either Shia or Sunni. So they exist within both of those groups. The difference between the Sufi and your average Muslim is the Sufi is your more spiritually minded Muslim. I guess that's one way we could put it. They early on developed a great appreciation for the Catholic mystics. So they began to try to achieve direct experience or direct connection with God, this sort of thing. So Sufi Muslims They can be either Shia or Sunni, but they are devoted to the spiritual aspect of Islam, not necessarily the militaristic or the earthly pursuits. You know,
So
oh no, they'll be jihad, or they could be, but they I mean the one guy that I talked to who was a Sufi was a very peaceable guy, but yeah, but their emphasis is on spiritual purity, prayer, meditation, direct experience of Allah, this sort of thing, purification. That is their goal. Their goal is less earthly minded, more spiritual minded, so to speak.
They're Pentecostal.
They're Pentecostals, yeah,
They can be.
yeah, kind of like that.
The whirling dervishes, I think, are Sufi related.
The Whirling Dervishes, is that a band?
Oh, yeah.
No, they're the ones that spin.
You don't know that one?
I know,
Okay.
I'm just kidding. It just sounds like a band
Sounds
name.
It kind of does, but yeah, that's a Sufi expression in most cases.
The Whirling Dervishes on tour.
That's what
Yeah, Google whirling dervishes or something.
So,
You'll raise an eyebrow.
This can be very confusing because you can have the two, if they're part of the two different other Muslim sects.
Yeah.
That's why they say Muslims are so spiritual, so nice, so wonderful.
so they
and
might look at a
and then-
Sufi and
And
then,
you got the 10 other ones that are with them that are not.
Yeah.
Because they're, okay. I mean, I think that's confusing when people kind of lump them all in one thing.
well, that's why it's good to know about them. You know, and that's the same thing, sort of like Baptists. All Baptists are the same. Oh no, we're not.
Right,
We
right,
certainly are not.
right. Yeah, because what was the one before that?
The Sufis or the Sunnis.
Yeah, the Sunnis, the one that's 80 to
Yeah.
90% like the SBC. and the other-
The Shia are like the Reformed Baptists. Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? I don't know that I like that comparison. You know, there's a guy, there's a YouTube guy named Keith Foskey.
Oh dear.
He's a funny,
He's hilarious.
He's a hilarious
He's
guy.
hilarious, yeah.
But he sort of got famous doing these comedic sort of videos. And there are all kinds of things like different denominations do this, you know, like different denominations celebrate Christmas, different denominations. And he always has a Reformed Baptist on it. He's a Baptist himself, but he definitely, like the Presbyterian always is talking about superior theology.
And the Reformed Baptist always has a lot of guns.
The Reformed Baptists always have guns.
Firearms.
They always have guns. I'm like, okay, that's pretty accurate. It's all good.
What's his name again?
Keith Foskey.
Fossey?
F-O-S-K-E-Y.
FOSKY, yeah. He's actually a pastor, a Baptist
Yeah.
pastor.
Yeah.
I forget where. He's a First London guy.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew he was Reformed somehow, but yeah. Okay, I didn't know he was a First London guy.
More New Covenant.
Yeah, I have heard that. I'll play you some of his videos when we're done here.
I mean, all the different denominations do anything. It's hilarious.
I love the Methodist guy. He's hilarious. But
That's,
Methodist guy is always the one who gets kicked out.
that's because he's the heretic.
there you go.
No, seriously.
All right, so let's continue. Let's talk a little bit about the spread of Islam, and I'll probably try to move through this pretty quickly, because really what I want to do is impress upon us that this took place very quickly. It took place in the matter of a little over 100 years, and we see the absolute subjugation of the Byzantine Empire with very little exception. We see the complete subjugation of it by the turn of the millennium, or right soon after the turn of the millennium. Here is, if you will recall, what? Islam is spread by military conquests. That's all I put on the heading. It is spread by military conquest. And here's the map that we referred to earlier. Remember, down here is the Arabian Peninsula. Up here we have the Persian Empire in the green here. Then we have the red is the Byzantine Empire, which stretches on over to here. And then over here we have the Berbers, which is another barbarian tribe. We have the kingdom of the Visigoths, the Basques, and the kingdom of the Suaves. Sueves, yeah, something
Something.
like that. So we have, that's what we have in the realm of the Mediterranean world that I want you to pay attention to. That's before Islam, and we'll take a look at this this list here. In 635, they take over Syria. Syria is just north of Israel, but they begin the conquest of Syria in 635. 637, they take over Jerusalem. 639, they go to Persia and take over and begin the conquest of the Persian Empire. There's actually a different army that heads toward Persia than is headed toward the Middle East. So they sort of divide their armies, which, by the way, is a tactical blunder unless you know that you have some overwhelming superiority. And they do. They begin to conquer all of these areas. Then they go to Alexandria. They turn and go to Alexandria. Yet another turn. Alexandria is in Egypt. It's in the very northern part of Egypt, right on the Mediterranean Sea. But it's one of those ancient patriarchates. And by the way, Antioch, Syria is one of the other ones. That's the church of Antioch. So Antioch has been taken over. Alexandria has been taken over within 5 years. The Persian Empire is falling. Then in 648, Cyprus and other Mediterranean islands. This is where Paul goes on his first missionary journey. It was on the Isle of Cyprus. And the Muslims conquer Cyprus and a number of other Mediterranean islands. Then they invade the southern part of Asia Minor, which is Ephesus and those areas. And Constantinople is in this region as well. Now, they don't take Constantinople. They try to, and in 673 through 678, they lay siege to Constantinople. Constantinople, however, has just invented, or not they haven't invented, but what rescues them from being taken over is a little thing called Greek fire. If you ever heard of Greek fire, it's basically the nuclear weapon of this age. And it's a combustible that they begin to use against the Muslims, and the Muslims die. They get repelled. So Constantinople puts a check on Muslim advance. Now, do you remember where Constantinople is?
Yes.
It's right at the mouth of the Black Sea there, and it's right at the mouth. So that we're talking Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey. Interestingly enough, that's a foreshadowing, right? Yeah, all the way over to Alexandria, Egypt, by the latter part of the 7th century. So in about 50 years or so, less than 50 years, they've taken over that entire land. They're not stopping yet, but they have been checked at Constantinople for the time being. They turn the other way and they start going into northern Africa. And by 711, they have conquered all the way from Alexandria, which is in Egypt, to the Berbers, which is in Algeria, or just right south of Spain. It's right across the bay there, or what is that called? Right across the Straits of Gibraltar. Yeah, the strait, right across the strait from Spain. And they've conquered up to that area. The Muslims in 711 cross over into Spain and they begin conquering Spain. Now, who puts a check to it in Spain? Who remembers that? It's not until you get to the northern part of Spain.
Charlemagne, wasn't it?
Not Charlemagne.
Charles Martel.
Martel, the hammer.
One of those Charles.
Oh, the
Hammer!
Yeah, the hammer.
Yep, Charles Martel. Yeah, one of those Charles people. Exactly. Charles Martel puts a
It's
stop to
lot
it.
remember.
At the Battle, yeah, it is. There's lots of people, right? He puts a stop to it at the Battle of Tours in 732. Again, the Muslim advance is checked. Now, so we've gone from the 630s to the 730s. That's 100 years. And what have we conquered? From Constantinople all the way around to Spain, including
The
Spain.
southern half of what used to be the Roman Empire.
Exactly. In 100 years, Islam has conquered all of that. And then they already have the Arabian Peninsula.
Everything north of the Sahara Desert, and then they're trying to invade Spain. And they did.
They did it, yeah. So that's that is with lightning rapidity. Islam conquers that that basically brings the Byzantine Empire to its knees. It has conquered more territory than the Byzantine Empire occupied, although they have not conquered the entire Byzantine Empire yet.
Because Constantinople still stood.
It's still standing for now. Fire.
And this is military conquest.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah, they're not evangelizing.
Did Charles,
Yeah. Yes.
did Charles Martel face a large percentage of the Muslim army?
Well, it spreads out as they go. And so whenever the Muslims would conquer an area, they would have to settle the area and administer the area and then move on. In some cases, that would give them more supplies because they could get the supply chain. But Martel, I mean, he faced a formidable army, and Spain would remain in Muslim hands, but Europe starts to fight back in what they call the Reconquista. So they're not so strong that they can't be overcome. In fact, we'll get to what's his name? Is it Roland? I think. Who eventually goes in the Reconquista and just starts whooping up on the Moors. That's what the Spanish Muslims they come to be called. They come to be called the Moors. But there are a lot of these people, like the Berbers. They fight the Berbers for like 10 or 11 years, and finally, in fighting the Berbers, they finally do conquer them. But then the Berbers become Islamic. They become Muslims. They convert. And that's where you get sort of the intermarriage and stuff like that. And then you've got the Moors coming out of that. So, yeah. And then we'll get into Roland and the Reconquista.
So when you're talking northern Spain, are you talking like Madrid or?
Kind of the modern border between Spain and France, that area.
Yes.
Well, that would be the northern border of
right here.
Spain.
Right there.
Now, this area becomes heavily fought over,
Where the
but
Basques-
that's where it stops.
Okay.
And now they don't take complete control of Spain, but they're coming up through here through the Visigoths. They're fighting up into the up into this area. They get stopped right here, but a lot of this area is still barbarian. It's still Christian. Some of it's still Aryan. So Spain eventually is going to be reconquered by the Europeans and by Christian forces.
And what's the purple?
The purple, that's the Frankish Empire. That's where you have the Merovingians and the Carolingians, and eventually they take over this entire area, the purple area, the Kingdom of Burgundy, and the northern part of Italy. By 1000, they're all the way like right there.
That's where you get your HRE,
HRE.
Holy Roman Empire.
Yes, that's it.
What's that stand for?
Holy Roman Empire.
Oh, the Holy
Yeah.
Roman Empire.
In the Lombards too, so they're up into that area as well. Then they're eventually going to be, they're eventually going to come down through here and conquer all of this. But yeah,
But
Yeah.
that, all that red now is Islamic.
no, starting right here, going all the way over here, up to there.
So it's just that Turk part of, what's that, Turkey?
This is
Modern day Turkey.
Yes.
No,
this is modern day Turkey
no,
right
to
here.
the left. What's that?
That's Greece. So this area, so you've got the
That area, yeah.
what is that called? The Caucasus Mountains are there, I think. This is where you've got the Slavs and the Czechs and all that. This becomes heavily fought over, and this goes back and forth for a while, but not yet. Not until you get past 1150 or 1050. Sorry.
So the Slavs and the Czechs are way down there.
Well, this whole this whole area, yeah. You've got European. Well, stop it. You've got Europeans and things. So you've got Romania. Yeah, Transylvania was this is where Dracula is. This goes back and forth between. You have Dracula, the legend of Dracula being spawned up in there, because he goes and just goes medieval, literally, on the occupiers of the Muslim occupiers who were there. He impales them by the thousands.
Hence his nickname.
Yeah, Well, it was basically state terrorism is what he was doing. He had an inferior army, but they were highly mobile and they engaged in state terrorism. And they would take a pike and they'd hang a Muslim on it and they'd stick it in the ground, and it was just like a forest of them, you know. And they would do that just to terrorize the Muslims, and it worked. It struck fear into the hearts. They didn't want to end, the Muslims didn't want to end up on the end of a pike, you know. So it struck fear in their hearts.
Isn't Tour, the city of Tours about where the H is and where the Franks?
Tours
Yeah, the city of Tours, like.
Up
Valley
here?
Tours.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up in the map.
I think it was like a lumber.
Let me see. I think this was the only map I gave you. I didn't know that I ever located tours. Let me look at it. And it's also, it actually took place between two cities, Tours and Poitiers. And
I mean, that could be.
There we
part of
go.
the city.
it is, you might be very right.
Too, might be different.
Where is my map? Well, I have a map of how the battle was won here.
That's interesting. It's like the Muslims conquered almost the whole early Christian
Yeah,
map.
yep, yeah. Well, and they're trying, now they're doing it by birth and,
Right,
and
it's
breeding.
something I've been
Yeah,
saying for a long
interracial.
time now. Islam is doing in Europe by biology what they could never do with the sword,
Right.
and they are. I am of the persuasion that most of Europe at this point is lost. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, spiritually, but I mean physically.
Did it
The
go?
United Kingdom is one of the worst. There
There
are
it
good
is.
men that are fighting back in good ways.
Well, take Catholicism over Islam any day.
Yeah, you're
Well,
right.
at least
It is
they're not
up,
trying to
it is
kill
up
you right
further
now.
than that. Helene, that is where Poitiers and Tours are.
And back at the time of the Reformation, it wasn't exactly a good place to be.
Well,
But
but I mean, if you won that
They're in the
battle, you would
heretics.
push them farther south, so.
Yeah. Well, send them packing.
Exactly, back to whatever.
They're still trying to do it.
There we go. Yeah, the battle was actually located between the two cities there.
They got way up. It's kind of scary.
But they were pushed way down. Eventually, they get pushed back to there because that's where Charlemagne eventually is draws the line down there, and it is
battles keep happening.
battles. Yeah, that is the heavily fought over place. All right,
That was what, around 1,000?
which one? The Battle of Tours?
Or no, Charlemagne.
Charlemagne was
When they
late
pushed
800s, I think, or 800s. Let me look at that again. Look at my notes. So Tours was, I believe, in the 700s, and what was it, 730 something?
Yeah, you said
Charlemagne was-
732.
Yeah, Charlemagne was Charlie. I had that on the timeline. Well, the timeline is just a few slides away. Yeah, Charlemagne's through 814.
Oh, Charlemagne is 814.
Yeah. All right.
So he pushed the Muslim back down into Spain, where they were.
Yeah.
up
Well,
in
by the
France.
time he's there, they're back down into that area. Yeah, into Spain. And again, Spain gets fought over, and then Spain experiences what they call the Reconquista, which is there are still remnants of Christians in Spain, and they actually are, part of society, which we'll get to. That life under Islamic rule, in some places and in some contexts, for Christians wasn't altogether bad, because let's face it, if you come into an area and you conquer it and everybody dies, then you have to populate that area. Whereas if you conquer it and then take the people who are there and subjugate them and make them work for you, then you can move on and fight other fights, and you still have control over them. They can produce goods for you, so that can promote you, keep you fighting. So so it's always good policy to not just destroy everybody. So they didn't kill everybody. They just killed enough people to conquer and whatnot. Well, in Spain, these populations of Christians that are still there begin to populate, begin to repopulate, and then fight back. And they're very good at it as well. There are a couple of for whatever reason, Christians know how to fight, and they fight back for their home and hearth and start reconquering.
If I research correctly, it takes a very long time
Oh, it
to
does.
finally drive Islam out of Spain.
Yeah.
Isn't it this is the last battle fought about the time of Ferdinand and Isabella,
In fact,
like 1400s?
That's one of the reasons that Columbus sails. A lot, people look at Columbus they look at him as just basically being a money hungry merchant or something like that. And obviously trading with India would be good, right? So because look at the map again here. You have all of this area. There used to be a trade route that went through there, known as the Silk Road. Well, now it's all owned by Muslims. And so what do you think they're going to do? They're going to let Europe trade through the Silk Road? No, not without a very heavy tax. And so Columbus, yeah, he wants to go this way to get over to India over here, instead of going through the Silk Road or going down around Africa. He wants to head east to get to the west. He just doesn't know about this big landmass in the way. But one of the reasons he wants that trade is not just so that he can make himself wealthy. He already was wealthy. He wants to fund another crusade because, like you said, Ferdinand and Isabella, they're on the tail end of this Reconquista, and they want to solidify their rule, their power, and they want to take the Holy Land back from the Saracens. What they would say.
Had they taken Spain back, or?
Yeah, well, Spain wasn't Spain. Spain was a bunch of different. What is it? I can't remember. Ferdinand and Isabella both were rulers in their respective areas. They come together and they start uniting things. But Spain was a conglomerate of many different groups and regions. It wasn't. It was called Spain, but it wasn't like we think of a nation today having one leader and that sort of thing. So, but it was more of a confederacy. But a lot of that took place because the Moors had come in there and done such division, divided it up such, just through fighting and stuff like that. I mean, even here it's divided up ethnically between a number of different people. But yeah. So anyway, we will continue on. I think we are after 7. We will continue on next week and get into some more things. But Islam remains. Here we are in the mid 700s, and Islam has taken over much of the Mediterranean world that was previously Christian, and represents a real political, military, and religious threat to Christians and Christian-held lands of the Middle Ages. We tend to think of nations as, the U.S. is here, it has its borders. Canada is here and it has its borders, and Mexico is here and it has its borders. That wasn't so much, yes, you had to know what area you had control over, but that wasn't so much these were just defined. These are rough estimates of populations that are defined by ethnic groups or linguistic groups and that sort of thing. It was much more cosmopolitan than today's world is, in terms of the different kinds of people that mix it up. Anyway,
What area was more cosmopolitan?
the whole Mediterranean world. I mean, because we do have different groups that are like kings, you know, kingdoms and kings and stuff like that. But it's ever changing, and the people from one population are going to mix very easily, you know, in and out of these different places.
There were a lot of different languages.
Oh yeah, dozens of different languages, and people. I've been reading a book on Christopher Columbus lately. He knew like 8 or 9 different languages, and because he was a merchant, he would go around and he would do business, and he didn't have to do that. There was no lingua franca, unless you want to count Latin in the West or Greek in the East. He knew those too. So yeah, it was you know, that's just the way people were back then, and they were polyglots, much different than what we are today. And for the most of my life, I don't know, probably the same as yours. Well, yeah, for most of our lives, you know, the U.S. has been the U.S. Our borders have been constant and not challenged. Well, except recently, but not politically challenged. Nobody's come in to try to conquer us. You know,
Yeah.
and and
It's been slow,
much the same.
sneakingly snow.
Well,
slow.
it's from within, not from without.
Yes, it's from within.
I have a globe from when I was a kid, and it is strikingly similar to the world map today. Now it has the Soviet USSR on it, so that's different, you know. But you understand what so there are certain countries that have gone out of existence and new ones popped up, but not nearly the kind of change that we're seeing in this sort of scenario, where you just got populations moving all over the place, massive immigration, not IMM, but or EM. Yeah, probably both.
Well, this is over 1,000 years, and your globe is only 100 years old.
Well, this is 100 years. When I'm talking about the Muslims coming in and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
changing the face of this, that's 100 years. And it's 100 years, 1,500 years ago. Yeah, about 1,400 years ago, whatever. So they don't even have jet planes. They don't even have trains, and you know, this sort of thing. They're moving entire populations by foot.
Did Jesus speak to any of this? Was there any of his?
Are you talking about like prophetically?
Yeah.
He was
Not
in India.
specifically.
Yeah, not specifically, no. Not like we see in Daniel speaking about, you know, the
87.
yeah. That's what Daniel's speaking about. Yeah, but he's also speaking about the various kingdoms rising up
Yes.
and this sort of thing. That's what I was getting at.
Oh, yeah.
So
That was like a few hundred BC or something.
he doesn't know the New Testament does not make prophecy about this sort of thing, which is why it's much easier to understand Revelation instead of it's primarily a text on the very last days. That Revelation is primarily a text on what's going to happen in AD 70, which is the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem.
It's that whole soon thing.
Yeah, well, and you would expect to see this kind of thing if it was a prophecy primarily directed at the end times. You follow what I'm saying? So you would expect that, but yeah.
Well, it's such a big conquest of the whole Christian world
Mhm.
after Christianity had spread for hundreds of years, and now Islam is covering
Yeah.
over all those Christian areas.
There's something that is going to happen with Islam, though, that is actually going to help purify Christianity.
Yes.
Think about where we're at right now, and I know we haven't got to the theological developments in the Middle Ages. That's good. We got to get there still. But the theological developments in Christianity are not good. I mean, we have Mary worship. We have the idea of transubstantiation being promoted. We have all of this kind of thing
But
going
in the
on.
grand scheme of things, with Christianity and the spreading of the gospel, are those so huge? I mean, those
Oh,
are
yeah.
just little nuggets compared to the gospel.
Mary worship.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any Christians that are doing Mary worship. Every now and then I see a Mary statue,
I
but
want you to define by Christian too.
Well, it depends on what you mean by worship.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
because I understand what you're saying, but you know, Roman Catholics
And they will
venerate
deny that they
Mary.
worship Mary.
but God used the Catholics for a long time
Sure.
to
Bring him around.
represent
like
the
I
gospel,
said-
much more so than Mohammed. So,
Yeah,
At the
and like
same
I
time,
said-
8,500
And
Catholicism
it's
is
all
not
process.
8,1500 Catholicism.
Exactly. AD 1500 Catholicism is completely apostate. AD 500 Catholicism says we will see as when we look through the theological developments. There's good in that, and so but there's a sufficient amount of bad. And how do we get rid of that? Well, we have to get rid of that by rediscovery of the gospel. What happens to cause the gospel to be rediscovered? Well, the Protestant Reformation. What drives the Protestant Reformation? The fall of Constantinople. Who is it that conquers Constantinople? It's the Muslims.
It was, yeah.
It seems like the establishment has had a large, influence. It's a framework that individuals have to grow up in when they're born into it, whether it's a Catholic church or a monastery, and then these priests grow up to become great theologians. And even though they were raised Catholic, like Martin Luther,
Sure.
and
A lot of them, yeah.
but that it didn't make them and all of the people that read and understood it. In other words, Christianity survived that. I guess the big question in my mind is this big spread of Islam and over the Christian world, and Indonesia being the large, huge center. They have been very intolerant of Christianity, from what I understand.
Oh yeah, they persecute Christians pretty readily.
So that's a big contrast between Christianity and Islam. The Christians are not, in our countries, are not reciprocal. I mean, why are we so tolerant of Islam, which is
Because
like perfection as opposed to?
That's a great question, because we don't know our history. We don't know the history of what Islam is.
And
the
we don't know
Christians.
what's happening underneath.
And we trust CNN.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I mean, those are indicative of the issue, Jeff. To answer your question seriously, I think all of those play into that, right? Because we have been fed a propaganda that we need to be tolerant toward other religions.
Yeah.
Because and this starts in the 1950s, right? Where we need to, we need to be open-minded. We need to get God out of schools. We need to teach these religions as if they were just, this is one way, this is another way. We need to be a secular society. The problem is that there's no such thing as a secular society. We all worship something. And when you try to treat all religions as equal, what you end up with is polytheism. And that doesn't please God. But that's we have been taught the virtue of tolerance. That has been shoved down our throats for the last 50 years that I know of.
It's the injustice of false witness having his way in court.
Yes. And a false witness having his way in society. The false witness of Islam, the false witness of you name it, the Sikhs right down the road, false witness of the Buddhists, the false witness of the Mormons.
Also right down the road.
Also right down the road, we've got Mormons, Sikhs, Muslims, Methodists.
There should be
Really?
an open,
And of course, Romanists.
there should be a Christian Nobel Prize to award to the different countries and their religions in what they accomplish and how just they are.
Well,
and then call it what it is. Say this is this is what your polytheism is.
yeah, and that's intolerant for us, so we can't do that. But we
No,
do.
No, it'd be the opposite. It'd be tolerant. It'd be not just tolerant, but truth and clarity.
The truth is very intolerant.
Oh.
The truth doesn't tolerate lies.
I thought it's the other way around.
Oh no, the truth is not tolerant of lies.
Oh,
The world is not tolerant of contradictions, and that's why people don't like the truth.
narrative is not tolerant either.
No, it is not. You are absolutely correct.
Neutrality is a myth, and
Now,
therefore tolerance being an expression of neutrality is also a myth.
What the biblical worldview will do is that it will allow for a certain measure of conscience, whereas these others won't. They'll pretend to, but they actually don't have a basis for it. But God has given us the ability to choose whether or not we follow Him, and we always choose not to until He saves us, and then we choose to follow Him. Left to ourselves, we always choose.
So is in the heavenlies, where we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against
Yeah.
spiritual, what is it, what's the quote?
We wrestle not against special, against flesh and blood, and against powers and principalities. This present darkness. Yeah.
So are these, some of these powers, the spiritual power in the heavens that's above Islam, or is that?
Oh yeah, I would say so. Yeah. The Apostle Paul calls all of these pagan religions demonic, or the worship of demons. Islam is the worship of demons. I was preaching out there. I got us in trouble. I got the police called on us this week because I was preaching for No King's Day. And I was preaching about the demonic nature of the Muslim religion, and how how it is false and it's demonic and everything. Well, somebody got their undies in a twist and decided to call the police on us, and they said that we had threatened to stab them. I don't know where they
I
got that
figured
from.
out what that was about.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because there was one guy that was driving through and he kept yelling hypocrite at us.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
And that was after you had spoke. And then Jordan had said, well, come show us how. Or
Yeah.
something to that. And
Yeah.
I think that the
He
guy
took
driving
that as
through
a-
was
okay.
whatever. He heard whatever he wanted or,
Yeah.
didn't actually hear what
That
he said.
just goes to show that people have different thinking when they hear something.
Yeah, and I was loud on the speaker, so he probably didn't really even adequately hear what Jordan said. Because Jordan was like, "Hey, come park over here and let's talk."
Yeah,
That's what he was trying to get him to do.
Yeah,
And the guy they drove
He
off.
just was driving through.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't.
it was the tone that he presented himself
You talking about Jordan?
Well,
to the man.
Yeah,
The
he was.
man thought it was
Yeah, yeah.
a threat.
Well, and then Jordan's kind of a big guy, and he's
Yeah.
he's a strapping young lad.
Yeah.
He's hey, come on over and talk.
And the guy.
And the guy might have taken it as, "Hey, get over here, let's
That's
talk.
right, that's what
Let's
he
go."
did. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
well, he's literally just driving through.
Jordan
I don't
had to
think
yell
he actually
over
heard
the,
what he said, but
yeah,
he
Just heard him yell.
Yeah.
He had to yell over you, so it might
It's
have
happened
sounded
to me
threatening.
before.
Yeah, he doesn't have that kind of voice.
I can.
Because I normally have a loud voice and I had a speaker. So there's Dusty might be able to get there. Nobody else.
I just-
I can.
Not if I have a speaker. Sit down, girl.
Oh, no, he was loud and
No one's out yelling a half mile away.
Yeah.
no.
I just love the woman thought you with No Kings. From
Yeah.
the rally.
She's like, drop. I'm like, Jesus. You know what? I appreciate a lot of things that Trump has done. I was actually preaching because I was talking about the No Kings thing, and I was like, the problem with these No Kings people is that number one, it's not that they don't want kings. They do want kings. They just don't want the King of Kings ruling, or the kings that the King of Kings rule over.
They don't want to be ruled over, period.
Oh, they want their guys in office.
Yes.
They want their Biden or their whoever, and so they want their guys in office. That's it is what it is. But they're you want to talk about tyranny? Like, look, a king is not a bad form of government if you have a good king.
If it's a good.
The problem
There's
with a
no
monarchy
point.
comes when there's a tyrant, right? So we can all agree. But you know what? A democracy can be tyrannical as well.
Yes.
It's the tyranny of the 51%.
So it hasn't worked.
So, no, democracies are terrible.
Yes.
But
Two
any
wolves
form
and
of
a sheep
government
deciding
can
what's
be
for dinner.
tyrannical. Do what?
Democracy, 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner.
Yeah. We vote on it.
That guy walked out when you were talking about democracy. Was he the guy in our Sunday school class this morning?
Well, he sent us his information after that. So
Yeah.
evidently he was okay with what we said. And it's like, well, whatever.
Where's he from?
I don't know. He
He
just
just
showed up.
worried me the way he's walking around and going out there.
He
and then-
strikes me as a guy that just can't sit still.
Well, then he looked through the window
Let's
back
stop
there, and
the
I go,
stream.
What's that?
Are we done?
Did he go out to
Yes.
his bathroom?
All right, well, I'm going to stop the
Yeah.
stream.
Oh, were you still streaming?
Oh, no.
Well, it was getting close to